we often find ourselves caught in loops, cycles of self-doubt, patterns of procrastination, or recurring anxieties that dim the vibrancy of daily life. The feeling is familiar, a subtle drag, a sense that despite our best intentions, certain outcomes seem predetermined. A client, let's call her Anya, once described it as, quote, where every step felt heavier than it should. She wasn't facing a crisis, but a persistent undercurrent of dissatisfaction, a feeling that she was constantly reacting to life rather than shaping it. This common human experience, this sense of being at the mercy of internal states and external circumstances, is precisely where both contemporary psychology and ancient spiritual wisdom offer profound yet surprisingly simple interventions. This essay explores the profound efficacy of simple psychological tricks that always work, not as manipulative ploys, but as elegant shifts in perception, attention, and behavior that leverage the inherent architecture of the human mind and spirit. We will journey beyond superficial self-help, delving into the core mechanisms that consistently produce positive change, integrating evidence-based psychological insights with timeless spiritual principles. Our aim is to illuminate how these seemingly simple tricks are, in fact, powerful expressions of deeper truths about human flourishing, revealing that the art of living well is often about mastering a few fundamental, yet potent inner adjustments. From a psychological perspective, these tricks are rooted in our understanding of cognitive biases, neuroplasticity, behavioral conditioning, and the intricate dance between our conscious and unconscious minds. We will draw upon frameworks such as cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, positive psychology, social psychology, and neuroscience to unpack the mechanics of how these interventions reliably redirect attention, reframe challenging situations, cultivate beneficial habits, and enhance emotional regulation. For instance, the psychological trick of reframing a perceived failure into a learning opportunity directly impacts neural pathways, reducing amygdala activation, our brain's fear center, and strengthening prefrontal cortex activity, our center for problem solving and executive function. These are not mere mental gymnastics. They are deliberate applications of how our minds are designed to operate. Parallel to these scientific discoveries, spiritual traditions spanning millennia have offered analogous wisdom, often framing these raw, quote, 5, as pathways to inner peace, liberation, or divine alignment. Buddhist teachings on mindfulness, sati, and right intention, samasankappa, offer sophisticated techniques for attention control and purposeful action that resonate deeply with modern cognitive science. Christian contemplative practices emphasize surrender and acceptance, echoing the psychological benefits of letting go of control and cultivating trust. Sufi mysticism speaks of purifying the heart, taskiyat al-nafs, and divine remembrance, dhikr, which psychologically translates to consistent self-awareness and intentional focus. Hindu philosophy, with its concepts of karma yoga, action without attachment to outcome, and dharma, purposeful living, provides a blueprint for effective and meaningful engagement with the world. Existential philosophy, too, challenges us to confront our freedom and responsibility, urging authentic choices that align with our deepest values. These traditions, though diverse in their language and cultural context, consistently point toward fundamental truths about human experience and the inner work required for profound transformation. The true power of these assessors sec lies in their integrated nature. Psychology provides the Diessestessen manual for the mind, offering empirical data and practical techniques. Spirituality provides the Aussec, des espoirs, grounding these techniques in a larger context of meaning, purpose, and connection to something beyond the individual self. For example, a psychological trick like mon quotidiensiestes is scientifically proven to boost mood and well-being by shifting neural pathways associated with positive affect. From a spiritual lens, gratitude is not just a technique, but a posture of humility and reverence, a recognition of interconnectedness and grace, central to practices across many faiths. When we approach gratitude with both psychological understanding and spiritual depth, its impact is amplified, moving beyond a temporary mood boost to a fundamental shift in one's orientation to life. This essay will systematically explore several of these universal psychological tricks, revealing their underlying mechanisms and their spiritual correlatives. We will begin by establishing the overarching framework that integrates these two powerful lenses. Subsequent chapters will then delve into specific tricks, such as the power of mindful attention and intentional focus, drawing from mindfulness-based interventions and Buddhist sati, the art of cognitive reframing and perspective taking, connecting CBT with spiritual teachings on non-attachment and illusion, the transformative practice of cultivating compassion and forgiveness, linking social psychology with Christian agape and Buddhist metta, the efficacy of setting clear intentions and aligning actions, exploring goal-setting theory alongside Dharma and right action, and the profound freedom found in acceptance and letting go, bridging with spiritual concepts of surrender and impermanence. Each chapter will explore modern manifestations of these patterns, offer brief illustrative examples from both psychological case studies and spiritual biographies, and conclude with practical, actionable steps for integration into daily life. By weaving together the empirical rigor of psychology with the profound wisdom of spiritual traditions, we aim to offer a comprehensive and deeply resonant understanding of how simple yet potent inner adjustments can unlock enduring well-being. These are not mere quick fixes, but rather invitations to align with the deeper operating principles of our existence, transforming the invisible mud of daily struggles into a clear pathway toward a life of greater presence, purpose, and peace. As we outlined in our preceding exploration, the journey toward profound personal transformation is paved not with grand, arduous endeavors, but with simple, elegant shifts in perception and behavior, what we term simple psychological tricks. These are not superficial sleights of hand, but rather deeply potent interventions deriving their efficacy from a sophisticated integration of contemporary psychological insights and timeless spiritual wisdom. Before we embark upon the systematic unpacking of these individual techniques, it is imperative that we first lay a more comprehensive theoretical groundwork, illuminating the very architecture of the mind that these tricks so skillfully leverage, and further elucidating the synergistic power born from uniting scientific understanding with spiritual tradition. We often find ourselves, much like our illustrative client Anya, feeling ensnared in cycles of self-doubt, anxiety, or procrastination, as if navigating a dense invisible fog. These states, though often experienced as personal failings or intractable realities, are in fact the emergent properties of complex yet predictable cognitive and emotional patterns. Our minds, marvellously efficient instruments, are prone to establishing habitual pathways, both beneficial and detrimental. When faced with uncertainty or perceived threat, the brain, in its ancient wisdom, defaults to survival strategies that, while once adaptive, may now contribute to our modern dis-ease. This is where the power of the simple trick truly lies. It is a gentle yet precise recalibration of these deeply ingrained patterns. At the heart of our capacity for change lies the remarkable phenomenon of neuroplasticity. For too long, the prevailing scientific paradigm viewed the adult brain as a static entity, its fundamental structure largely immutable. However, contemporary neuroscience has unequivocally demonstrated that the brain is a dynamic, ever-evolving landscape, constantly reorganizing itself in response to experience, learning, and intention. Neural pathways are not fixed superhighways, but rather adaptable trails that can be widened, narrowed, or even rerouted entirely. This scientific understanding provides the empirical bedrock for our approach. If the brain can change, then we can change. Simple psychological tricks are, in essence, deliberate and mindful efforts to sculpt this neural landscape, fostering new, more adaptive pathways while gently allowing less desirable ones to recede. Consider, for instance, the prevalence of cognitive biases and heuristics, mental shortcuts our brains employ to process vast amounts of information quickly. While often efficient, these shortcuts can also lead to systematic errors in judgment and perception. Confirmation bias, for example, compels us to seek out and interpret information in a way that confirms our existing beliefs, even if those beliefs are detrimental. Similarly, the availability heuristic leads us to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily recalled, often due to their emotional salience, contributing to anxiety. Psychological science meticulously maps these biases, providing us with the how-to guide for recognizing and gently counteracting them. A trick might involve a simple question that prompts us to actively seek disconfirming evidence, thereby interrupting the automatic biased processing. Yet, this purely scientific understanding, while powerful, often falls short in providing the sustained motivation and deeper meaning necessary for lasting transformation. Herein lies the indispensable contribution of spiritual wisdom. While psychology identifies the specific cognitive and emotional mechanisms at play, labeling them as rumination, catastrophizing, or attentional bias, spiritual traditions have, for millennia, addressed these same human tendencies, albeit through a different lens. Practices such as meditation, contemplative prayer, self-inquiry, and compassionate action, found across diverse traditions from Buddhism to Christianity, Sufism to Hinduism, were designed to cultivate states of mind that directly counteract these very psychological pitfalls. For example, the psychological technique of cognitive reframing, consciously choosing an alternative interpretation of an event, finds its spiritual correlative in practices of gratitude, acceptance, and surrendering to a higher purpose. When we reframe a perceived failure as a learning opportunity, we are not merely engaging in a mental exercise. We are also, perhaps implicitly, adopting a spiritual posture of humility and resilience, recognizing that true growth often emerges from adversity. The trick here transcends mere symptom reduction. It becomes a pathway to meaning, purpose, and a deeper connection to something beyond the individual ego. Spirituality provides the context and motivation for sustained practice, transforming a transient mental maneuver into a profound integrated way of being. It answers the crucial why bother question, lifting the endeavour beyond mere self-improvement to self-transcendence. Our internal world is not a static construct but a dynamic living landscape, a landscape we are constantly, whether consciously or unconsciously, cultivating. Imagine your mind as a garden. Without conscious attention, weeds, negative thought patterns, unhelpful beliefs can proliferate, choking out the beneficial growth. The soil might become depleted, or essential pathways might become overgrown and impassable. Simple psychological tricks, informed by both psychological and spiritual insights, serve as our sophisticated gardening tools. They allow us to identify and gently clear the weeds, to enrich the soil with nourishing practices, to plant seeds of positive intention, and to build clear, accessible pathways for desired states of mind. This metaphor underscores a crucial point. We are not merely passive recipients of our thoughts and emotions. We are active participants in shaping our internal experience. We possess the agency, the capacity for conscious choice to tend to our inner garden. This agency, however, often remains dormant, overshadowed by the illusion that our thoughts and feelings are autonomous forces beyond our control. The first step in reclaiming this agency, in truly becoming the conscious gardener of our internal landscape, is to cultivate the foundational skill upon which all other psychological tricks are built, the power of attention. Attention is, arguably, our most precious and finite resource. Where we direct our attention dictates our reality. Psychologically, this is understood through concepts like selective attention and attentional bias, the propensity for our minds to focus on certain stimuli while filtering out others. If our attention is habitually drawn to perceived threats, shortcomings, or past grievances, our experience will naturally be one of anxiety, inadequacy, or regret. Conversely, if we can consciously and consistently direct our attention towards aspects of gratitude, presence, and potential, our internal landscape begins to transform accordingly. Spiritually, the cultivation of attention is central to virtually every tradition, from the Buddhist practice of mindfulness, which emphasizes present moment awareness without judgment, to the Christian contemplative tradition's focus on centering prayer, which gently redirects attention from discursive thought to divine presence. The thread is consistent. To be truly present is to be truly alive. It is to step out of the automatic pilot mode of the ego and into a state of conscious engagement with reality. Without this foundational capacity for mindful attention, the other tricks, cognitive reframing, cultivating compassion, setting clear intentions, practicing acceptance, would be akin to trying to build a house without a stable foundation. We cannot reshape what we cannot first perceive. We cannot redirect a thought we are not aware of thinking. Therefore, our initial and most crucial task will be to understand and practice the art of conscious attention. This is not about forcing our minds into submission, but rather about gently training them, like a puppy, to return to the present moment, to observe without entanglement, and to choose its focus with intention. It is a subtle shift, yet one that unlocks profound possibilities for transformation. It is the first, indispensable key to unlocking the power of these simple psychological tricks, allowing us to move from merely reacting to life to consciously creating an internal experience of enduring presence, purpose, and peace. In the chapters that follow, we will systematically explore each of these, quote 20, beginning with the profound simplicity of mindful attention. We will delve into its psychological mechanisms, its spiritual correlatives, and provide practical steps and illustrative examples to guide your own cultivation of this essential skill. We will demonstrate how, by mastering the art of attention, we begin to lay the groundwork for a life lived with greater clarity, equanimity, and profound fulfillment. The journey ahead promises not merely a reduction in suffering, but an expansion of consciousness itself. As we embark on this journey to master the us, we must begin at the very foundation, conscious attention. We have established that attention is our most precious and finite resource, the very lens through which we perceive and construct our reality. Without the ability to direct this fundamental faculty, all other attempts at personal transformation, no matter how well-intentioned, will remain superficial, akin to painting over rust without addressing the underlying corrosion. Conscious attention is not merely a trick, it is the master key, the foundational skill that unlocks every subsequent possibility for cultivating the garden of the mind. Consider the mind, as we previously posited, as a garden. Our thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are the plants, some vibrant and life-giving, others thorny and suffocating. But who is the gardener? It is our attention. An unconscious gardener, one whose gaze is perpetually distracted by the latest digital birdsong or the clamour of external demands, will find their garden overrun. Weeds will proliferate, delicate blooms will wither from neglect, and the entire landscape will reflect a state of disarray and reactivity. This is the experience of many, including our client Anya, who describes her life as Gamayas quote 22. Her attention scattered, her energy drained, her internal landscape dictated by external stimuli and ingrained patterns rather than conscious choice. Our attention, in its default state, is rarely truly, quote 23. It is often hijacked, a puppet on the strings of myriad internal and external forces. It is drawn by the siren song of social media notifications, ensnared by the relentless churn of anxious thoughts, or tethered to past grievances and future anxieties. This is what we refer to as unconscious attention, a state where our focus is not intentionally directed, but rather passively captured by whatever stimulus happens to be most salient or emotionally charged at any given moment. To reclaim our internal sovereignty, to move from a reactive existence to one of conscious creation, we must first learn to consciously direct our attention. This science behind attention underscores its profound importance. Neuroscientifically, our capacity for sustained, focused attention is largely governed by the prefrontal cortex, the seat of executive functions, planning, and decision-making. However, our brains also possess a default mode network, DMN, a neural circuit that becomes active when our minds are not engaged in a specific task, leading to mind-wandering, self-referential thought and rumination about the past or future. While the DMN plays a role in self-reflection and creativity, an overactive DMN, unchecked by conscious attention, can become a breeding ground for anxiety and dissatisfaction. Furthermore, Our brains are wired for survival, constantly scanning the environment for potential threats, a mechanism that often biases our attention towards negativity and perceived danger, even in safe contexts. This ancient wiring, coupled with the relentless information overload of the modern world, creates a perfect storm for fragmented, anxious attention. The good news, however, lies in neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. Through intentional practice, we can literally reshape our attentional pathways, strengthening the circuits associated with focus and presence, and calming those prone to distraction and rumination. This scientific understanding finds a profound resonance in the timeless wisdom of spiritual traditions. Across diverse lineages, the cultivation of conscious attention has been recognized as a central pillar for spiritual awakening, inner peace, and a deeper connection to reality. In Buddhism, sati, mindfulness, the practice of bringing one's attention to the present moment without judgment, is the very first step on the Noble Eightfold Path. In Christian contemplative practices, focused prayer and meditation aim to direct attention towards the divine, cultivating a sense of presence and communion. Sufi dhikr involves repetitive invocation to focus the mind and heart on God, dissolving distractions. In Hinduism, dharana, the concentration of the mind on a single point, is a preparatory stage for deeper meditative states, leading towards dhyana, meditation, and ultimately samadhi, enlightenment. These traditions understood, long before fMRI scans, that sustained focused attention is not merely a psychological tool, but a pathway to transcend the ordinary limitations of the ego and experience a sense of unity, purpose, and profound peace. They recognize that by consciously directing our attention, we can dissolve the illusion of separation and perceive the interconnectedness of all things, aligning our individual consciousness with a broader, more expansive reality. So, how do we practically train this elusive faculty of conscious attention? We do so through systematic, consistent practice. Much like an athlete trains a muscle, we begin with formal practices and then integrate these skills into our daily lives. One of the most effective formal practices is mindfulness meditation. This is not about emptying the mind or achieving a state of blissful nothingness, but rather about gently guiding our attention to a specific anchor, most commonly the breath, and observing whatever arises without judgment. The mechanics. Find a quiet space and sit comfortably. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Bring your attention to the sensation of your breath, the rise and fall of your abdomen, the air entering and leaving your nostrils. Your mind will wander. This is not a failure. It is simply what minds do. The practice lies in noticing when your attention has drifted to a sound, a thought, a sensation, a memory, a future plan, and, without criticizing yourself, gently bringing it back to your breath. It is a continuous cycle of noticing and returning. The benefits. Regular mindfulness meditation, even for just 10-15 minutes a day, has been shown to decrease activity in the DMN, increase connectivity in regions associated with attention and emotional regulation, like the prefrontal cortex, and reduce stress hormones. It builds the Sanya quote 24-hour est of attention, making it easier to focus in daily life and less susceptible to distraction. It creates a vital space between stimulus and response, allowing for conscious choice rather than automatic reaction. Beyond formal meditation, we cultivate informal mindfulness by integrating conscious attention into our everyday activities. Mindful eating. When you eat, truly eat. Notice the colours, textures, aromas, and tastes of your food. Chew slowly, savouring each bite, rather than rushing through the meal while distracted by your phone or thoughts. Mindful walking. Feel your feet connect with the ground. Notice the rhythm of your steps. Observe the sights and sounds around you without labeling or judging them. Mindful. Listening. When someone speaks, give them your full, undivided attention. Truly hear their words, their tone, their unspoken emotions, rather than formulating your response in your head. The chapter quote 25. Practice. Throughout your day, take brief, intentional pauses. Stop for a moment, take 3 deep breaths, and simply observe your immediate environment or your internal state. What do you see, hear, feel? What thoughts are present? This simple act breaks the chain of unconscious reactivity and regrounds you in the present. Single tasking. In a world that glorifies multitasking, commit to single tasking. When you're working on a project, focus solely on that project. When you're reading, just read. This is a powerful way to train your attention and improve the quality of your work and presence. Of course, the path to mastering conscious attention is not without its challenges. The mind, accustomed to its wandering ways, will resist. We will experience impatience, frustration, and the persistent pull of distraction. It is crucial to remember that a wandering mind is not a sign of failure, but a normal aspect of the human condition. The key is not to eliminate thoughts, but to change our relationship with them. Instead of getting caught in their current, we learn to observe them as clouds passing in the sky. When our attention drifts, we simply and gently bring it back, as again and again without judgment. This gentle redirection, imbued with self-compassion, is the essence of the practice. Consistency, even in small doses, is far more impactful than sporadic, intense efforts. The transformative power of conscious attention cannot be overstated. By consistently training this faculty, we begin to perceive our internal and external worlds with greater clarity and discernment. We move from being victims of our thoughts and emotions to becoming their conscious observers. This creates a crucial space, a moment of freedom between a stimulus and our response. Instead of reacting automatically, we gain the capacity to choose how we will respond. This is the very essence of agency and empowerment. Conscious attention is not just the first trick, it is the prerequisite for all subsequent tricks. Without it, how can we observe the automatic negative thought patterns that we wish to reframe? How can we cultivate compassion if we are not present enough to truly feel another's suffering or our own? How can we set clear intentions if our mind is perpetually scattered? How can we practice acceptance and letting go if we cannot even acknowledge what is present? Conscious attention is the light that illuminates the garden of the mind, allowing us to see which plants are thriving, which need nurturing, and which are weeds that need to be gently removed. It is the conscious choice to water the seeds of peace, purpose, and presence, rather than allowing the weeds of anxiety and dissatisfaction to flourish. It is the first, most essential step out of Anya's quote 20 and onto the solid ground of intentional living. As we cultivate this foundational skill, we lay the groundwork for a profound shift in our experience of life. With our attention sharpened and our awareness expanded, we are now ready to explore how we can actively reshape the content of our minds. In the next chapter, we will delve into the powerful practice of cognitive reframing, learning how to consciously alter our perspectives and transform our reality. With the foundational skill of conscious attention firmly established and practiced, we are now equipped to engage with the next powerful psychological trick: cognitive reframing. If conscious attention is the master key that unlocks the door to our inner world, allowing us to perceive the contents of our mind, then cognitive reframing is the architect's tool that enables us to redesign that inner landscape, shifting our perspective on events, thoughts, and emotions to alter their meaning and impact. We have observed how the untrained mind, left to its own devices, often defaults to patterns of rumination, anxiety, and a reactive stance toward life's circumstances. This default mode, while sometimes serving a protective function, frequently traps us in cycles of unproductive thought, fueled by cognitive biases and deeply ingrained narratives. Anya, our illustrative client, experienced this acutely, feeling perpetually stuck in, quote, 27, because her automatic interpretations of challenges were consistently negative, self-defeating, and disempowering. She saw obstacles as insurmountable walls rather than as invitations to ingenuity or growth. Cognitive reframing directly addresses this pervasive human tendency. It is the deliberate and conscious act of changing the way we look at a situation, an idea, or a feeling. It is not about denying reality or engaging in wishful thinking. Rather, it is about recognizing that our interpretation of reality is often more influential than reality itself. As the ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus famously stated, quote, 28. This profound insight, echoed through millennia, forms the bedrock of modern cognitive psychology. Our emotional and behavioral responses are not direct reactions to external events, but rather to our internal narrative about those events. Consider, for instance, a job rejection. One individual might interpret this as just quoted 29, leading to feelings of despair, self-doubt, and potentially withdrawal from future opportunities. Another might reframe it as, to quote 30, leading to resilience, self-assessment, and renewed determination. The external event, the rejection, is identical, yet the internal experience and subsequent actions diverge dramatically based on the chosen frame. The Yatsi quote 31 awareness of cognitive reframing leverages our brain's inherent neuroplasticity and its capacity for creating new neural pathways. Our brains are pattern-matching machines, and over time we develop habitual ways of thinking, often reinforced by past experiences or societal conditioning. Many of these habits fall into categories of cognitive distortions: catastrophizing, expecting the worst; personalization, taking things too personally; all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, and mental filtering, focusing only on the negative. Without conscious intervention, these distortions become our default lens, shaping our reality in unhelpful ways. This is precisely where conscious attention becomes indispensable. Before we can reframe a thought, we must first notice it. The practice of mindfulness, as detailed in Chapter 3, trains us to observe our thoughts without immediate judgment or entanglement. It allows us to step back from the stream of consciousness and identify the specific negative or unhelpful interpretation that is causing distress. Only by identifying the thought, by bringing it into the light of conscious awareness, can we begin to question and transform it. The process of cognitive reframing can be systematically broken down into 3 key steps. Step 1. Awareness and identification. This initial step relies entirely on our cultivated capacity for conscious attention. We must first become aware of the automatic thought or interpretation that arises in response to a situation. This often manifests as a strong emotional reaction, e.g., anxiety, anger, sadness, or a sudden, often self-critical internal commentary. For example, if a colleague offers constructive criticism, the automatic thought might be, "They think I'm incompetent," accompanied by a flush of shame. The practice here is to pause, breathe, and simply observe this thought as an object of consciousness, rather than immediately identifying with it or reacting to it. We ask ourselves, what story am I telling myself right now? Or, what is my immediate interpretation of this event? Step 2. Questioning and challenging. Once the automatic thought is identified, the next step is to gently yet rigorously question its validity, helpfulness, and necessity. This is not about arguing with ourselves in a judgmental way, but rather adopting a curious, investigative stance. We become a friendly detective examining the evidence. Is this thought 100% true? Is there any other possible interpretation? Is this thought helpful to me right now? Does it move me closer to my goals or desired state of being? Am I looking at all the evidence, or just the evidence that supports this negative conclusion? What would I tell a friend who had this exact thought? What assumptions am I making? Is this a fact or an interpretation? In the example of the colleague's criticism, questioning might involve, quote 41. This step is crucial for loosening the grip of the automatic thought and creating mental space for alternatives. Step 3. Reconstructing and reinterpreting. Having questioned the initial frame, we now actively seek to construct an alternative, more balanced, empowering, or constructive perspective. This requires intentional effort and creativity. We are not replacing a negative illusion with a positive illusion, but rather seeking a more accurate, nuanced, and useful understanding of the situation. Quote 42. Quote 43. Quote 44. Quote 45. Quote 46. For our colleague's criticism, a reframe might be, "This feedback is an opportunity for professional growth. My colleague cares enough to help me improve, and I can choose to learn from their perspective." This shifts the narrative from personal attack to developmental opportunity, altering the emotional response from shame to curiosity or determination. The integration of spiritual wisdom profoundly enriches our understanding and application of cognitive reframing. Many spiritual traditions emphasize the transient nature of thoughts and emotions, advocating for non-attachment and the cultivation of an inner observer. Buddhist teachings, for instance, invite us to see thoughts as clouds passing in the sky, rather than identifying with them as our inherent self. This detachment is not indifference, but a profound recognition that we are not our thoughts. We are the consciousness that observes them. This perspective naturally leads to the ability to reframe, as it underscores that our thoughts are not immutable truths, but malleable constructs. Similarly, Christian contemplative practices encourage renewing the mind, Romans 12:2, a process of consciously aligning one's thoughts with higher truths and principles, rather than passively accepting worldly narratives or self-deprecating beliefs. This spiritual injunction is a direct call for cognitive reframing, urging us to choose perspectives rooted in faith, hope, and love over those born of fear, scarcity, or judgment. The concept of finding grace or a lesson in every trial, seeing challenges as divine opportunities for growth, is a powerful form of spiritual reframing that transforms suffering into meaning. The benefits of mastering cognitive reframing are manifold and transformative. By consistently practicing these 3 steps, we begin to rewire our neural pathways. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive functions like decision-making and emotional regulation, becomes more active, allowing us to override the amygdala's automatic threat responses. This leads to reduced anxiety and stress. By reframing perceived threats into challenges or learning opportunities, we decrease the physiological stress response. Increased resilience. The ability to bounce back from setbacks is significantly enhanced when we can reframe failures as feedback. Greater emotional control. We move from being victims of our emotions to conscious choosers of our internal state. Improved problem solving. A reframed perspective often reveals new solutions or alternative courses of action that were obscured by negative thinking. Enhanced relationships. By reframing misunderstandings or others' behaviors, we foster empathy and reduce interpersonal conflict. Cultivation of optimism and hope. Regularly seeking constructive perspectives naturally cultivates a more positive outlook on life. Just as with conscious attention, cognitive reframing is a skill that strengthens with consistent practice. It is not a one-time fix, but an ongoing discipline. Initially, it may feel effortful, even artificial, to challenge deeply ingrained thought patterns. However, with each deliberate reframe, we reinforce new neural circuits, making the process more automatic and intuitive over time. We are quite literally sculpting our brains to serve us better. This essay posits that the journey of personal transformation is not about eradicating challenges, but about transforming our relationship to them. Cognitive reframing is a potent tool in this endeavor, allowing us to actively shape our internal narratives rather than being passively shaped by them. It empowers us to shift from a reactive stance to a proactive one, from feeling like a victim of circumstances to becoming the conscious architect of our experience. As we progress through the subsequent chapters, we will see how cognitive reframing serves as a crucial bridge, enabling us to effectively engage with other powerful psychological tricks. The ability to consciously observe our thoughts and then deliberately choose a more empowering perspective is a prerequisite for cultivating practices such as gratitude, self-compassion, and intentional goal setting, all of which rely on our capacity to direct our mental energy toward constructive ends. The, quote, 50D of reframing, therefore, is anything but trivial. It is a fundamental shift in agency, profoundly altering the trajectory of our inner and outer lives. Having cultivated the foundational skill of conscious attention and begun the vital work of cognitive reframing, we now possess the initial tools to sculpt our inner experience. We have learned to notice the automatic currents of our minds and to consciously redirect the narratives that shape our reality. Yet, merely altering our thoughts, while profoundly impactful, addresses only one dimension of our being. The human experience is not solely intellectual. It is deeply emotional, relational, and inherently interconnected. To truly thrive, to move beyond merely coping and into a state of flourishing, we must extend the kindness we begin to show our reframed thoughts to the very core of our being, and subsequently to the world around us. This brings us to our fifth psychological trick, one that integrates our preceding efforts and elevates our capacity for well-being. The cultivation of compassion. Where conscious attention illuminates the internal landscape and cognitive reframing allows us to redesign its features, compassion provides the warmth, the nurturing soil, and the profound understanding necessary for true growth. It is the architect's embrace, recognizing the inherent fragility and resilience in every structure, including ourselves. We contend that compassion is not merely a soft sentiment, a gentle inclination, but a robust and active psychological process, a potent force for personal transformation and relational harmony. Psychologically, compassion is often misunderstood, conflated with pity, empathy, or even mere kindness. While related, it is distinct. Pity often carries a condescending tone, a feeling for another, without necessarily understanding or sharing their experience. Empathy, conversely, is the capacity to understand or feel into the experience of another, to vicariously share their emotions. While crucial, empathy alone can lead to empathic distress or burnout if not paired with a clear intention to alleviate suffering. Kindness is a benevolent disposition or action. Compassion, however, synthesizes these elements. It is the profound awareness of suffering in oneself or others, combined with a sincere desire to alleviate it and a commitment to act towards that alleviation. It is, in essence, love in action, rooted in understanding. The neuroscientific underpinnings of compassion reveal its profound impact on our well-being. Studies utilizing functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, demonstrate that engaging in compassionate practices activates brain regions associated with empathy, emotional regulation, and reward, such as the anterior insular, anterior cingulate cortex, and even parts of the reward system. When we cultivate compassion, we are not merely being nice. We are actively rewiring our brains for connection, resilience, and happiness. This neural recalibration helps reduce activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, thereby diminishing anxiety and stress responses. Moreover, compassionate practices are linked to the release of oxytocin, often dubbed the 52, which fosters social bonding and trust, further cementing our capacity for healthy relationships. At its core, compassion begins with the self. Self-compassion is not self-pity or self-indulgence. It is treating ourselves with the same understanding, care, and kindness we would offer a dear friend facing a similar struggle. For many of us, this is a radical notion. Our inner dialogue, often a remnant of past criticisms or societal pressures, can be relentlessly harsh. We judge our imperfections, berate our mistakes, and amplify our shortcomings. This self-critical voice, far from motivating us, often paralyzes us, fostering shame and undermining our efforts towards growth. It is the antithesis of the nurturing environment required for our inner garden to flourish. This is precisely where the lessons from conscious attention and cognitive reframing become indispensable. Conscious attention allows us to notice the emergence of the inner critic, to observe its pronouncements without immediately identifying with them. Cognitive reframing then empowers us to challenge the validity and helpfulness of these self-deprecating narratives. Is this thought truly helpful? Is it kind? Is it even accurate? Once we create this space, self-compassion steps in as the active, intentional response. Spiritually, the cultivation of compassion resonates across nearly every wisdom tradition, underscoring its universal importance. In Buddhism, metta, loving kindness, meditation is a foundational practice, systematically cultivating boundless benevolence towards oneself, loved ones, neutral persons, difficult persons, and finally all sentient beings. This practice explicitly trains the mind to wish well and alleviate suffering. In Christianity, the directive to was or quotia 53 testes encapsulates the essence of compassion, implying that self-love and love for others are inextricably linked. The parable of the Good Samaritan is a vivid illustration of active compassion for a stranger in distress, transcending tribal or social boundaries. Sufism, the mystical branch of Islam, emphasizes divine love and the unity of all creation, leading to an inherent empathy and compassion for all beings as reflections of the divine. Hinduism, through the principle of ahimsa, non-harming, extends compassion to all forms of life, recognizing the interconnectedness of existence. These traditions, ancient and diverse, converge on the profound truth that compassion is not merely an ethical imperative, but a pathway to liberation, inner peace, and a deeper connection with the sacred. The Yasa's quote 54 of compassion, therefore, involves a deliberate and systematic approach to cultivating this profound quality within ourselves and extending it outwards. It unfolds in 3 interconnected steps. 1. Awareness, the foundation of noticing. Drawing directly from our practice of conscious attention, the first step is to simply notice suffering in ourselves and in others without immediate judgment or reactivity. This means observing the subtle pangs of disappointment, the quiet anxieties, the frustration with a perceived failure within ourselves. It also means noticing the signs of struggle in others, a furrowed brow, a sharp word, a withdrawn demeanour. Our trained attention allows us to pause, to create that crucial space between stimulus and response, and to simply register the presence of distress. Without this initial awareness, compassion cannot arise. 2. Connection, the realization of common humanity. Once we notice suffering, the next step is to connect with it through the lens of common humanity. This is where cognitive reframing plays a crucial role. We actively challenge the isolating narratives that tell us, quote, 55 yes, or, quote, 50x. Instead, we intentionally reframe our experience to recognize that pain, imperfection, and struggle are universal aspects of the human condition. Everyone experiences failure, loss, inadequacy, and disappointment. When we make a mistake, instead of saying, quote 57, self-compassion encourages us to reframe it as, quote, 58. This shift from isolation to connection is profoundly liberating, reducing shame and fostering a sense of belonging. For others, it involves recognizing that their difficult behaviors or expressions of suffering often stem from their own unmet needs, fears, or past wounds, rather than being purely malicious. We acknowledge that, in similar circumstances, we too might struggle in similar ways. 3. Action, the intent to alleviate. The final, and perhaps most defining step of compassion, is the active desire and commitment to alleviate suffering. This is where compassion differentiates itself from mere empathy or understanding. It moves us towards a benevolent response. For ourselves, this might involve offering words of comfort, taking a soothing breath, engaging in a self-care activity, or setting healthy boundaries. It means actively choosing to nurture ourselves rather than punish ourselves. For others, this might manifest as offering a kind word, a listening ear, a practical gesture of help, or simply holding space for their pain without trying to fix it. The action need not be grand. Often, the most powerful acts of compassion are the simplest expressions of care and understanding. To integrate this trick into our daily lives, we can employ several practical methods. Mindful self-compassion practice. Inspired by the work of Dr. Kristin Neff, this involves 3 core components. Mindfulness, noticing our suffering without judgment. Common humanity, recognizing that suffering is part of the shared human experience. And self-kindness, actively offering ourselves warmth and understanding. A simple exercise is to place a hand over your heart when experiencing distress and silently offer yourself a kind phrase, such as Rast, quote, 59. The, quotidian 60. Exercise. When faced with self-criticism or a mistake, pause and ask yourself, Blan, quote 61. Then consciously attempt to offer yourself that same level of understanding and support. Loving-kindness meditation, metta. This formal meditation practice systematically cultivates compassionate feelings. Begin by directing wishes of well-being towards yourself, quote 62. Then extend these wishes to loved ones, neutral persons, difficult persons, and finally, all beings. This practice actively trains the mind to generate and radiate compassion. Active, compassionate listening. When interacting with others, practice listening not just to their words, but to the underlying emotions and needs. Suspend judgment and focus on truly understanding their perspective, even if you don't agree with it. This creates a space for connection and allows for a more compassionate response. Mastering the cultivation of compassion acts as a powerful antidote to anxiety, self-doubt, and interpersonal conflict. It fosters resilience by transforming our relationship with suffering, allowing us to meet challenges with greater equanimity and an expanded capacity for connection. It deepens our sense of meaning and purpose, aligning our actions with the desire for the well-being of all. Moreover, it lays crucial groundwork for the subsequent psychological tricks we will explore, particularly forgiveness and acceptance, demonstrating that true strength lies not in emotional imperviousness, but in the courageous embrace of our shared humanity. This trick, therefore, is not merely about feeling better. It is about becoming more fully human, more deeply connected, and ultimately more profoundly free. Having explored the profound implications of conscious attention, cognitive reframing, and the cultivation of compassion, we arrive at a psychological trick that, while often misunderstood, offers perhaps the most potent liberation of all: forgiveness. If conscious attention is the master key and cognitive reframing the architect's tool and compassion the heart's balm, then forgiveness is the alchemist's transmutation, transforming the leaden weight of past hurts into the gold of present peace and future freedom. It is a subtle, yet revolutionary shift that reclaims our inner landscape from the shadows of resentment, anger, and grievance. Many of us, like Anya, navigate our days feeling a persistent drag, an invisible mud that seems to cling to every step. Often, beneath the surface of general anxiety or dissatisfaction, there lie unaddressed hurts, unresolved conflicts, or perceived injustices. These are not merely memories, they are energetic anchors, tethering us to past events and the individuals involved, draining our vitality and distorting our perception of the present. Unforgiveness, whether directed at others or at ourselves, is a self-imposed prison. Its bars forged from the very narratives we cling to about what should have been, or what was, done to us. Defining forgiveness, an act of self-liberation. To clarify, it is crucial to understand what forgiveness is, and perhaps more importantly, what it is not. Forgiveness is not about condoning the harmful actions of another. It is not about forgetting the past or pretending that pain did not occur. It is not necessarily about reconciliation or restoring a relationship, especially if that relationship remains toxic or unsafe. Indeed, sometimes the most compassionate act is to establish firm boundaries or to distance oneself from a source of repeated harm. Instead, forgiveness is primarily an internal process, a conscious decision to release the emotional burden of resentment, anger, and the desire for retribution. It is an act of self-liberation, undertaken for the benefit of the forgiver, not the forgiven. When we forgive, we reclaim our emotional sovereignty. We sever the energetic cord that binds us to the past and to the person who caused us pain. This release does not absolve the other party of responsibility for their actions, but it does free us from carrying the weight of their trespasses. It means letting go of the hope for a different past and choosing to live more fully in the present. Both contemporary psychology and ancient spiritual traditions converge on the profound necessity of forgiveness for human well-being. From a psychological perspective, holding on to unforgiveness is a significant predictor of chronic stress, anxiety, and depression. When we ruminate on past grievances, our bodies remain in a state of heightened physiological arousal, releasing stress hormones like cortisol. This sustained activation of the sympathetic nervous system takes a toll on our physical health, impacting cardiovascular function, immune response, and sleep quality. Psychologists like Dr. Fred Luskin, director of the Stanford University Forgiveness Project, have extensively documented the measurable health benefits associated with cultivating forgiveness, including reduced blood pressure, improved sleep, and fewer physical symptoms of stress. The act of forgiveness, therefore, is a powerful form of emotional regulation, allowing us to process and release negative emotions rather than allowing them to fester and control us. It is an active choice to break free from the cognitive loops of blame and victimhood that perpetuate suffering. Spiritually, forgiveness is a cornerstone of nearly every major tradition, albeit expressed through different metaphors and practices. From the Christian injunction to "forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us," to the Buddhist emphasis on releasing attachment to suffering and cultivating karuna, compassion for all beings, including those who have erred, the message is clear. True peace, inner and outer, is unattainable without the capacity to forgive. These traditions recognize that holding on to grievances is a form of self-inflicted spiritual harm, clouding our consciousness and impeding our connection to a deeper sense of universal harmony and interconnectedness. Forgiveness, in this context, is not merely a psychological trick, but a spiritual practice, a pathway to inner purification and alignment with higher principles of love and acceptance. It acknowledges that all beings are fallible and that true wisdom lies in transcending the cycle of blame and retribution. Forgiveness does not exist in a vacuum. It is deeply interwoven with the psychological tools we have already explored. 1. Conscious attention. The journey of forgiveness begins with conscious attention. We must first become aware of the resentment, anger, or hurt we are carrying. This requires turning inward, observing the thoughts and feelings that arise when we recall a past transgression, and acknowledging their presence without judgment. Often, these emotions operate below the surface, manifesting as general irritability, cynicism, or a pervasive sense of victimhood. Through conscious attention, we bring these hidden burdens into the light, recognizing their energetic cost and the ways they subtly influence our present experience. It is only when we truly see the invisible mud of unforgiveness that we can begin to clean it away. 2. Cognitive reframing. Once aware of the grievance, cognitive reframing becomes indispensable. Our narratives about past hurts are often rigid and one-sided, emphasizing the perpetrator's culpability and our own blameless victimhood. While validating our pain is essential, reframing allows us to question the utility and accuracy of these entrenched narratives. Can we reframe the event not as an irreversible wound, but as a challenging experience from which lessons can be drawn? Can we reframe the other person's actions through a lens of their own limitations, ignorance, or suffering, rather than solely as malicious intent? This is not to excuse their behavior, but to shift our internal perspective, moving away from a narrative that holds us captive to the past. We might reframe our role from passive victim to an active agent choosing liberation. 3. The cultivation of compassion. Compassion, as discussed in Chapter 5, is the bridge that often facilitates true forgiveness. It asks us to extend understanding, first to ourselves for the pain we have endured and the burden we have carried. Self-compassion is a vital, often overlooked component of forgiveness, acknowledging our own suffering and offering ourselves kindness. Then, we are invited to extend compassion to the person who caused the harm. This does not mean excusing their actions, but rather recognizing their shared humanity, their own potential suffering, their imperfections, and the complex web of circumstances that may have contributed to their behavior. It is a recognition that harm often stems from hurt, and that all beings to varying degrees are navigating their own challenges. This compassionate understanding can soften the hardened edges of resentment, allowing for a release that feels less like a concession and more like an act of profound empathy. Forgiveness is rarely a single event. It is often a process, sometimes unfolding over time, with layers of emotion needing to be addressed. While individual journeys will vary, we can outline a systematic approach. 1. Acknowledge and validate the hurt. Before we can let go, we must first fully acknowledge the pain, anger, and injustice we feel. Suppressing these emotions only makes them fester. Allow yourself to feel the legitimate hurt without judgment. Journaling, talking to a trusted friend or therapist, or engaging in mindful emotional processing can be helpful here. This step is about honoring your experience. 2. Understand the cost of unforgiveness. Reflect deeply on how holding on to resentment impacts your life. How does it drain your energy, cloud your thoughts, affect your relationships, or contribute to your invisible mud? much like Anya's experience. Recognize that the primary beneficiary of releasing this burden is you. This step cultivates the intrinsic motivation to forgive. 3. Make the intentional decision to forgive. This is the conscious choice. It is a volitional act, a commitment to release the grievance, even if the feelings of anger or hurt still linger. The decision precedes the feeling, and the feelings will gradually shift as you commit to the process. This decision can be made internally through a silent declaration or written down as a symbolic act. 4. Cultivate empathy, optional and with caution. Forgiveness does not demand empathy, especially if the harm was severe or ongoing. However, for some, attempting to understand the other person's perspective, their upbringing, their struggles, their own pain, can sometimes help to soften the judgment and facilitate release. This is not about excusing, but about recognizing the complex factors that contribute to human behavior. If this step causes further distress, it should be set aside. 5. Release the grievance. This can take many forms. It might involve a symbolic act such as writing a letter to the person, which you may or may not send, then tearing it up or burning it. It might involve a visualization exercise, imagining the cords of resentment being cut. Or it might simply be a daily intention set during meditation or reflection, reaffirming your decision to let go. The key is to consciously and repeatedly redirect your energy away from the grievance and towards your own well-being. 6. Practice self-forgiveness. This is perhaps the most challenging yet essential aspect of forgiveness. We often hold ourselves to impossible standards, berating ourselves for past mistakes, perceived failures, or missed opportunities. Applying the very same steps outlined above to our own inner critic is vital. Acknowledge your perceived failing. Understand the cost of self-reproach. Make the decision to forgive yourself, and release the burden of self-blame. Self-compassion is the foundation here, recognizing that we, like all humans, are fallible, learning, and doing the best we can with the resources we have at any given moment. The journey of forgiveness, while challenging, culminates in profound liberation. The emotional energy that was once consumed by resentment and rumination becomes available for constructive endeavors, for creativity, for joy, and for deeper connection. We are no longer defined by what happened to us, but by how we choose to respond and integrate those experiences. For Anya, who feels, quote 66, the practice of forgiveness could be a powerful catalyst for change. Perhaps she carries the weight of past professional setbacks, blaming herself for perceived failures. Or maybe she holds a subtle, lingering resentment towards a former colleague or a family member. By consciously attending to these lingering grievances, reframing their narratives, extending compassion to herself and others, and making the intentional decision to forgive, she could begin to shed layers of that unseen burden. The mud would begin to dissipate, revealing firmer ground beneath her feet, allowing her to move forward with renewed lightness and purpose. Forgiveness is not about erasing the past, but about changing its hold on our present and future. It is a radical act of self-care, a conscious choice to prioritize our peace over the illusion of righteous anger or retribution. As we systematically apply the principles of conscious attention, cognitive reframing, and compassion, the alchemical process of forgiveness truly begins, transmuting the lead of pain into the gold of enduring inner freedom. We move from being victims of our past to empowered architects of our future, ready to embrace the next steps on this transformative journey. Having navigated the intricate pathways of forgiveness, releasing the tenacious grip of resentment, and liberating ourselves from the emotional burdens of the past, we arrive at a pivotal juncture in our journey of inner architecture. Forgiveness, as we explored, is an act of profound liberation, a deliberate unburdening that clears the way. Yet, clearing the path is but one half of the equation. The other, equally vital, is to consciously and consistently cultivate the flourishing landscape we wish to inhabit. This brings us to the next indispensable psychological trick in our repertoire, the profound and transformative practice of gratitude. Gratitude, at its core, is more than a fleeting emotion of thankfulness. It is a conscious orientation, a deliberate choice to acknowledge and appreciate the value in our lives, both big and small, tangible and intangible. It is the art of appreciative awareness, a lens through which we perceive abundance where scarcity once dominated, and opportunity where challenge once loomed. Psychologically, the cultivation of gratitude is a powerful intervention, empirically linked to a myriad of benefits. Research consistently demonstrates that a grateful disposition correlates with higher levels of positive emotions, increased resilience to stress, improved physical health, better sleep quality, and stronger social relationships. It actively shifts neural pathways, stimulating areas of the brain associated with reward and social bonding, such as the medial prefrontal cortex and the hypothalamus, thereby fostering a sustained sense of well-being and contentment. When we intentionally seek out reasons to be grateful, we are not merely feeling good, we are actively rewiring our brains for optimism and flourishing. This subtle yet potent trick seamlessly integrates with the foundational principles we have already laid. Indeed, gratitude cannot truly blossom without the fertile ground prepared by its predecessors. Firstly, conscious attention is the indispensable prerequisite for gratitude. In a world saturated with information and distraction, our default mode often steers our attention towards what is lacking, what is wrong, or what could be better, a vestige of our negativity bias. Gratitude demands a conscious redirection of this attention. It asks us to pause, to observe, and to deliberately seek out the blessings, the kindnesses, the beauty, and the simple gifts that often go unnoticed in the rush of daily life. It is the conscious choice to focus on the warmth of the morning coffee, the sound of laughter, the resilience of our own bodies, or the simple fact of another sunrise. Without the trained capacity to direct our attention, gratitude remains a fleeting sentiment rather than a sustained practice. Secondly, cognitive reframing provides the framework within which gratitude can take root, even amidst adversity. Life, by its very nature, presents challenges and setbacks. For Anya, navigating her, quote, 67. There are undoubtedly moments when the weight feels overwhelming, obscuring any potential for appreciation. Cognitive reframing allows us to challenge the automatic negative interpretations of these experiences. It empowers us to ask, quote, 68, or, quote, 69, or, quote, 70. This is not about glossing over pain, but about consciously seeking a broader perspective, understanding that even the most arduous journeys can yield valuable insights and forge profound resilience. Reframing a perceived failure as a learning opportunity or a lost connection as an opportunity for growth transforms the emotional landscape and creates space for gratitude for the lessons learned, if not for the event itself. Thirdly, the cultivation of gratitude deepens and expands our capacity for compassion. When we practice gratitude, we often find ourselves appreciating the contributions of others. The barista who made our coffee, the author who wrote a comforting book, the friend who offered a listening ear. This recognition of interconnectedness naturally fosters empathy and a greater sense of shared humanity. It allows us to see beyond individual grievances and appreciate the inherent goodness and effort in others. Similarly, self-gratitude, the appreciation for our own efforts, our own resilience, our own unique qualities, is a vital component of self-compassion, affirming our inherent worth and challenging the relentless inner critic. When we are grateful for who we are more likely to treat ourselves with kindness and understanding. Finally, gratitude serves as a powerful complement to our forgiveness. While forgiveness liberates us from the past, gratitude helps us to actively cultivate a more positive present and future. It allows us to move beyond simply releasing the burden of unforgiveness to actively appreciating the lessons learned, the strength gained, or even the new paths forged as a result of difficult experiences. Forgiveness cleanses the wound. Gratitude helps us appreciate the scar tissue as a testament to healing and resilience. It shifts our focus from what was lost or taken to what remains or has been gained, fostering a sense of peace and closure that transcends mere absence of resentment. From a spiritual perspective, gratitude transcends mere psychological benefit, evolving into a profound act of reverence and spiritual alignment. Across countless traditions, gratitude is considered a pathway to connecting with the sacred, an acknowledgement of the blessings that flow from a source beyond ourselves. It is the recognition of the interconnected web of existence, where every breath, every heartbeat, every ray of sunshine is a gift. This perspective moves beyond a transactional understanding of life, where we only feel grateful for what we have earned or deserved, to a more expansive view that embraces the sheer miracle of being. It invites us to see the divine in the mundane, to find holiness in the everyday, and to live in a state of continuous humble appreciation for the mystery and beauty of life itself. So, how do we actively cultivate this transformative state? The Quote 71, for gratitude are not grand gestures, but consistent, deliberate practices that integrate into the fabric of our daily lives. 1. The Gratitude Journal. This is perhaps the most widely recognized and effective practice. Each day, take a few moments to write down 3 to 5 things you are genuinely grateful for. The key is to be specific and to allow yourself to feel the gratitude as you write. Instead of, quote, 72, try, quote, 73 or, quote, 74. The act of physically writing rather than just thinking deepens the neural imprint and reinforces the positive association. This practice trains your conscious attention to scan for the good, actively counteracting the brain's natural negativity bias. 2. The Gratitude Walk, or SCAN. Integrate gratitude into your daily routines. As you walk to work, do chores, or simply sit in a waiting room, consciously look for things to appreciate. Notice the vibrant colours of nature, the architectural details of a building, the efficiency of a public service, or the simple comfort of your clothes. This is informal mindfulness applied to appreciation, turning ordinary moments into opportunities for upliftment. Even a quick mental scan before bed, recalling 3 positive things from the day, can significantly shift your emotional state and improve sleep. 3. Expressing gratitude to others. The power of verbalizing or writing your appreciation cannot be overstated. A heartfelt thank you to a colleague, a thoughtful note to a friend, or even a deep conversation with a loved one expressing how much they mean to you, amplifies the positive impact for both the giver and the receiver. It strengthens social bonds, creates a positive feedback loop, and reinforces your own grateful disposition. This moves gratitude from an internal state to an interpersonal act of connection. 4. Gratitude for challenges, reframing in action. This is where gratitude truly becomes alchemical. When faced with a difficult situation, instead of succumbing to negativity, consciously ask, "What is this teaching me?" Or, "How might this make me stronger?" Or, "What unexpected opportunities might arise from this?" This is not about being grateful for the suffering, but grateful for the growth, resilience, or wisdom that emerges from navigating it. For Anya, caught in her invisible mud, this might mean acknowledging the frustration, but then reframing it as a catalyst for seeking new strategies, appreciating her own perseverance, or recognizing the desire for change as a powerful force for good. By consistently engaging with these practices, we begin to sculpt an inner landscape that is not merely devoid of negativity, but actively vibrant with positivity. We move from the reactive state of being tossed by external circumstances to the proactive stance of consciously shaping our internal experience. Anya, by incorporating the art of appreciative awareness, can begin to perceive pockets of light and solidity amidst the invisible mud. She can train her attention to notice the moments of ease, the genuine connections, the small victories, thereby gradually shifting her overall experience from one of persistent struggle to one of growing appreciation and empowerment. The journey of inner architecture is an ongoing process of construction and refinement, with conscious attention as our compass, cognitive reframing as our blueprint, compassion as our mortar, and forgiveness as our demolition crew. Gratitude now emerges as the vibrant landscaping that transforms a mere structure into a living, breathing sanctuary. As we continue to build, we will discover how these cultivated internal states naturally pave the way for more intentional and purposeful engagement with the world around us, ensuring that the architecture we design within is fully expressed in the life we live without. The architecture of our inner world, meticulously constructed through conscious attention, reframing compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude, forms an unshakable foundation. We have diligently cultivated an inner sanctuary, a space of clarity, resilience, and appreciation. Yet, this profound internal transformation is not an end in itself. Rather, it is the vital prerequisite for a life lived with authentic power and purpose in the external world. A house, however beautifully designed and sturdily built, is meant to be lived in. A garden, however meticulously tended, is meant to bear fruit. The cultivated states of being we have explored are designed to manifest as a dynamic engagement with life, guiding us from passive reception to active, intentional creation. This brings us to the next indispensable psychological trick, one that integrates and expresses all the preceding practices. Purposeful action. This is not merely about doing things, but about acting with conscious intent, aligning our behaviors with our deepest values, our cultivated states of mind, and our burgeoning sense of self. It marks the pivotal shift from merely observing our internal landscape to actively shaping our external reality, transforming our aspirations into tangible contributions and our values into lived experiences. For too long, many of us have found ourselves caught in a cycle of reactive living, responding to external stimuli, societal expectations, or unconscious impulses. Our actions, though numerous, often lack a unifying thread, leaving us feeling fragmented, ineffective, or disconnected from a deeper sense of meaning. We might busy ourselves with tasks that feel obligatory but unfulfilling, or procrastinate on endeavours that truly matter, paralysed by fear, self-doubt, or the sheer inertia of habit. This essay posits that true agency emerges when our actions become deliberate, infused with purpose, and congruent with the inner wisdom we have so carefully nurtured. Purposeful action demands that we move beyond mere activity to a state of conscious engagement. It asks us to pause, to reflect, and to choose our next steps not from a place of automaticity or obligation, but from a wellspring of clarity and conviction. When we engage in purposeful action, we are not simply doing, we are being our values in motion. We are translating our inner architecture into the visible structure of our lives, creating a coherence between who we are internally and what we manifest externally. The why behind purposeful action is deeply rooted in our innate human need for meaning and contribution. When our actions are aligned with our values, we experience a profound sense of satisfaction, a reduction in internal conflict, and an increase in motivation and resilience. Procrastination often stems from a misalignment between what we feel we should do and what truly resonates with our authentic self. By clarifying our purpose and acting from that place, we overcome this internal friction, finding a natural impetus to move forward. This trick empowers us to be the architects of our own lives, rather than merely inhabitants buffeted by circumstance. So, how do we cultivate purposeful action? The how is intricately woven with the psychological tricks we have already mastered. Conscious attention serves as the initial beacon. Before we can act purposefully, we must first bring our awareness to what we are about to do and why. Are we about to embark on this task out of genuine desire or out of a conditioned response? Is this action aligned with our long-term vision, or is it a distraction? Conscious attention allows us to observe the impulses to act, to discern their origin, and to choose a response rather than simply reacting. It enables us to bring a mindful presence to the very act of doing, ensuring that our actions are not only effective but also deeply enriching. We become present not just to the outcome of our actions, but to the process itself, finding meaning in each deliberate step. Cognitive reframing plays a crucial role in sustaining purposeful action, particularly when faced with obstacles or setbacks. The path of purpose is rarely without its challenges. There will be moments of doubt, perceived failures, and external resistance. Without the ability to reframe these experiences, we risk succumbing to discouragement and abandoning our path. Purposeful action, when buttressed by reframing, views challenges not as deterrents, but as integral components of the journey. opportunities for learning, adaptation, and growth. A failure is reframed as valuable feedback, a redirection, or a necessary stepping stone. This mental agility ensures that our commitment to purpose remains unwavering, even amidst adversity. We learn to see the long game, understanding that temporary detours often contain hidden lessons essential for ultimate success. The cultivation of compassion guides the nature of our purposeful actions, imbuing them with ethical consideration and a broader sense of responsibility. When our actions stem from a place of compassion, they extend beyond self-interest to contribute to the well-being of others and the world around us. Purposeful action, therefore, is not merely about achieving personal goals, but about making a positive impact. Whether in our professional endeavours, our relationships, or our community engagement, compassion ensures that our actions are kind, considerate, and contribute to a more interconnected and supportive existence. It transforms our individual purpose into a shared endeavour, recognising that our flourishing is intrinsically linked to the flourishing of others. This trick helps us answer the question, what is my purpose for? Forgiveness liberates us to act boldly, unencumbered by the weight of past mistakes or the fear of future imperfections. Many individuals are paralyzed from taking purposeful action by a fear of failure, a lingering regret over past missteps, or a sense of unworthiness. Forgiveness, both of ourselves and of others, releases this emotional baggage. It allows us to view our past actions as learning experiences rather than indelible stains. When we forgive ourselves for perceived inadequacies or missed opportunities, we reclaim the energy that was bound in self-reproach, redirecting it towards present and future action. This freedom from self-condemnation cultivates the courage to embark on new initiatives, to take calculated risks, and to persevere even when the outcome is uncertain. Forgiveness, in this context, is the psychological trick that grants us permission to begin again and again with renewed vigour. Finally, gratitude serves as the fuel and the ongoing affirmation for purposeful action. When we act from a place of gratitude, we appreciate the very capacity to contribute, the resources at our disposal, and the opportunity to make a difference. Gratitude transforms purposeful action from a burdensome obligation into a joyful expression of our inherent capabilities and the abundance of life. We become grateful for the process, for the effort, and for the potential impact, rather than solely focusing on the outcome. This appreciative mindset fosters perseverance, even through arduous periods, as we find value and meaning in every step of the journey. Gratitude ensures that our purposeful actions are not driven by a sense of lack or a need for external validation, but by an overflowing appreciation for the gift of life and the opportunity to shape it. The integration of purposeful action with the preceding tricks creates a powerful self-reinforcing loop. Our inner states inform our actions, and our actions in turn deepen and solidify our inner states. When we act with purpose, we reinforce our conscious attention, sharpen our ability to reframe challenges, expand our compassion, strengthen our capacity for forgiveness, and deepen our gratitude. This virtuous cycle propels us forward, transforming our lives from a series of disjointed events into a coherent narrative of intentional creation. We are no longer simply reacting to the world, we are actively co-creating it. We move from being passengers to being pilots, charting a course aligned with our deepest values and highest aspirations. This shift is not about grand gestures alone. It permeates every aspect of our existence, from the mindful preparation of a meal to the focused attention on a professional project, from the compassionate engagement in a difficult conversation to the dedicated pursuit of a creative passion. Each purposeful action, however small, becomes a testament to our inner transformation, radiating outward and shaping a life of profound meaning and fulfillment. This is the ultimate expression of our inner architecture, a life lived with unwavering presence, unwavering purpose, and unwavering peace. And as we continue to refine this intricate interplay, we will discover that the journey itself becomes the destination, rich with discovery and imbued with ever-deepening significance. Having meticulously explored the individual mechanisms of conscious attention, cognitive reframing, the cultivation of compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, and purposeful action, we now arrive at the crucible of their integration. This essay has systematically unveiled each trick as a potent lever for inner transformation, yet their true power is not found in their isolated application, but in their dynamic, synergistic interplay. We have laid the groundwork, brick by conceptual brick, and now, in this chapter, we witness the magnificent architecture taking shape, revealing how these components interlock to form a robust, resilient, and deeply empowering internal system. Imagine a symphony orchestra, where each instrument, though capable of beautiful solo performance, truly finds its power and purpose within the harmonious collective. Or consider a meticulously designed architectural marvel, where each beam, pillar, and arch supports and reinforces the others, creating a structure far greater and more resilient than the sum of its parts. Similarly, the psychological tricks we have discussed function as an integrated ecosystem, each principle amplifying and enriching the others, creating a self-reinforcing loop of positive psychological and spiritual evolution. Let us revisit Anya, our archetypal seeker, who once felt trapped, walking through invisible mud. Her journey, in essence, is a testament to this integration. It began with conscious attention, the fundamental act of noticing the mud, the pervasive self-doubt, the creeping anxiety, the urge to procrastinate. Without this initial, non-judgmental awareness, no subsequent change would be possible. This attention creates the necessary space between stimulus and response, a crucial pause where agency is born. From this space, cognitive reframing emerges as the mind's capacity to question the nature of the mud. Is it truly inescapable or merely a perception? Is the internal narrative of inadequacy a fact or a story that can be rewritten? Attention identifies the thought. Reframing actively reconstructs it. When Anya observed her self-critical thoughts, reframing allowed her to challenge their validity, transforming them from absolute truths into mutable perspectives. This act of reframing in turn sharpens attention, training it to proactively seek out and question unhelpful patterns rather than passively accepting them. As Anya began to reframe her internal criticisms, a subtle but profound shift occurred. The emergence of compassion. She started to recognize the universality of her struggle, understanding that her self-doubt was not a unique failing but a common human experience. This self-compassion, nurtured by attentive observation and cognitive reconstruction, softened the harsh inner critic, It allowed her to approach her perceived flaws with kindness rather than condemnation. And as self-compassion deepened, her capacity for compassion towards others naturally expanded, fostering genuine connection and reducing feelings of isolation. This compassionate stance further enhances attention, making it more gentle and less reactive, and makes reframing more effective, as it is no longer driven by self-punishment, but by self-care. With compassion as a guiding force, the path to forgiveness becomes clearer. Holding on to resentment, whether towards oneself or others, is a significant source of the invisible mud. Conscious attention brings these grievances to light. Cognitive reframing allows us to disentangle the narrative of the past from our present well-being, recognizing that forgiveness is a liberation for the forgiver, not an absolution for the wrongdoer. Compassion provides the empathetic bridge, allowing us to understand the complex tapestry of human fallibility. When Anya forgave herself for past mistakes and others for their perceived wrongs, she released an enormous energetic burden, freeing up mental and emotional resources previously consumed by bitterness. This act of forgiveness in turn deepens gratitude as one becomes grateful for the release, for the lessons learned, and for the capacity to move forward unencumbered. And indeed, gratitude acts as a powerful accelerant within this system. It is not merely an emotion but a conscious orientation, cultivated through focused attention on what is good and abundant. Cognitive reframing helps us find gratitude even in challenges, transforming obstacles into opportunities for growth. Compassion allows us to be grateful for the shared human experience, for the support we receive, and for our own capacity to care. Forgiveness clears the emotional clutter that often obscures our blessings, making space for a deeper appreciation of life. As Anya cultivated gratitude, she found her perspective shifting from scarcity to abundance, from what was lacking to what was present. This positive emotional state, fueled by gratitude, makes conscious attention more focused, reframing more optimistic, compassion more expansive, and forgiveness more accessible. Finally, all these elements converge in purposeful action. This is where the inner architecture manifests in the outer world, transforming intention into tangible reality. Conscious attention guides the clarity of purpose and the steps required. Cognitive reframing provides the resilience to navigate setbacks and maintain momentum. Compassion ensures that actions are ethically grounded and contribute to the greater good. Forgiveness liberates us from the fear of failure or past mistakes, allowing us to move forward boldly. And gratitude fuels the entire endeavor, sustaining motivation and celebrating progress. Anya, once paralyzed by inertia, now found herself actively shaping her life, her actions aligned with her deepest values, each step propelled by the integrated strength of her inner architecture. This purposeful engagement further strengthens all preceding tricks, creating a virtuous cycle where action informs awareness, reframes beliefs, deepens empathy, enables release, and cultivates appreciation. It is crucial to understand that these tricks are not one-time fixes or magical incantations. They represent a systematic approach to neurosculpting, a deliberate reshaping of our neural pathways and habitual patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior. Just as a sculptor repeatedly works with clay, or a musician practices scales daily, consistent engagement with these principles is paramount. The brain, a marvel of neuroplasticity, learns through repetition and reinforcement. Each time we consciously choose to attend, to reframe, to extend compassion, to forgive, to feel gratitude, or to act with purpose, we strengthen the neural circuits associated with these positive states. Conversely, each time we allow ourselves to be swept away by unconscious reactivity, negative rumination, or emotional entanglement, we reinforce the old, less adaptive pathways. Therefore, the journey of inner architecture is a lifelong commitment, a continuous process of refinement and growth. The path of inner transformation is rarely a straight line. It often resembles a spiral, revisiting familiar challenges from a higher vantage point. Moments of doubt, relapse into old patterns, or the resurgence of deeply ingrained fears are not failures, but rather invitations for deeper application of these very tools. This is where the integrated system demonstrates its true resilience. When old anxieties resurface, conscious attention allows us to notice them without immediate judgment, preventing us from being consumed. Cognitive reframing provides the means to question the validity of these resurgent fears, reminding us that they are echoes, not necessarily present realities. Self-compassion enables us to meet these moments of struggle with kindness, avoiding the corrosive cycle of self-criticism. Forgiveness allows us to release any self-blame for slipping up, understanding that growth is iterative. Gratitude can be found even in the challenge itself, appreciating the opportunity for deeper practice and insight, and crucially, purposeful action guides us back to our chosen path, reminding us of our values and prompting us to re-engage with the practices that restore balance. This integrated response prevents minor setbacks from becoming catastrophic collapses, reinforcing the architecture rather than undermining it. When we proclaim that these psychological tricks always work, we are not promising a life devoid of external challenges or emotional discomfort. Rather, we are asserting that their consistent application, always, yields an internal shift towards greater agency, resilience, and peace, regardless of external circumstances. The work is internal. It is the transformation of our inner landscape, the cultivation of a robust psychological and spiritual immune system. While we cannot always control the waves of life, we can learn to surf them with greater skill and grace. The trick is not to eliminate pain or difficulty, but to change our relationship with it. When we apply these principles, we invariably experience increased self-awareness, a deeper understanding of our thoughts, emotions, and motivations, enhanced emotional regulation, the ability to navigate challenging emotions without being overwhelmed, sats, greater resilience, the capacity to bounce back from adversity with strength and wisdom, profound sense of purpose, a clearer alignment between our actions and our deepest values, expanded connection, a deeper sense of empathy and belonging with others, inner peace, a foundational calm that persists even amidst life's storms. These are not ephemeral benefits. They are fundamental shifts in our operating system, ensuring that the Circassius, quote, 96 guests consistently deliver their promise of empowerment. With diligent practice, what once felt like a deliberate, quote 97, or a conscious effort begins to seamlessly integrate into the fabric of our being. The scaffolding becomes the structure, the practice becomes the presence. The conscious architect, initially laboring over each design choice, eventually inhabits a space where intention and execution merge. This is the transition from conscious competence to unconscious competence, from effortful application to effortless being. The principles of attention, reframing, compassion, forgiveness, gratitude, and purposeful action cease to be distinct tools and instead become the very lens through which we perceive and interact with the world. Our default setting shifts from reactivity to responsiveness, from fear to wisdom, from fragmentation to wholeness. Anya, once consciously battling the Sassenger Niet, now finds herself moving through the world with an innate sense of balance and flow, the architecture within her serving as an invisible, unwavering support. This profound internal architecture not only transforms the individual, but fundamentally alters their experience of the world. The external environment, though unchanged in its objective reality, is perceived through a newly refined lens. Challenges are viewed as opportunities, connections deepen, and life unfolds with a greater sense of meaning and purpose. The journey initiated by Justin 99 culminates not in an endpoint, but in an ongoing, evolving state of conscious presence. It empowers us to live not just in the world, but as conscious co-creators of our reality, embodying the very principles that have guided our transformation. This is the profound promise of inner mastery, to move beyond simply surviving to truly thriving, with unwavering presence, purpose, and peace, realizing that the journey itself, in its continuous unfolding, is indeed the destination, the journey we have undertaken together through the intricate landscapes of the human mind and spirit, has systematically unveiled a series of profound yet deceptively simple psychological shifts. We have moved from identifying the foundational, 100 yastor of conscious attention, to establishing our, 101 dons of cognitive reframing, then nurturing the trustuskiam, 102 of compassion, undertaking this to 103 bots of forgiveness, meticulously engaging in this to 102 dots of gratitude, and finally culminating in the external manifestation of purposeful action. Each of these warmfaces, as we have termed them, possesses immense power in isolation, capable of subtly yet significantly reshaping our inner world. However, the true genius, the enduring efficacy, and the profound transformative 106 promise of this framework lies not in their individual application, but in their elegant and dynamic integration. As we approach the deeper implications of this integrated practice, we recognize that the initial acts of applying these psychological shifts are akin to learning the individual notes and scales of a complex musical piece. One might master a particular chord, say, conscious attention, or a melodic phrase, cognitive reframing. Yet the true artistry, the ability to evoke profound emotion and create a lasting impact, emerges only when these disparate elements are woven together into a harmonious symphony. This essay posits that the sustained and synergistic application of these simple psychological tricks initiates a process of profound inner architecture, transforming the mind from a reactive, chaotic space into a resilient, self-sustaining ecosystem of well-being. The concept of 107, which we introduced earlier, moves beyond the mere acquisition of new skills. It speaks to the fundamental rewiring of the brain. When conscious attention is consistently employed to observe thoughts and emotions, new neural pathways are forged, strengthening our capacity for metacognition. When cognitive reframing becomes a habitual response to adversity, the brain's prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and rational thought, becomes more adept at overriding the amygdala's knee-jerk fear responses. The regular practice of compassion, forgiveness, and gratitude activates the brain's reward circuits, releasing neurochemicals like oxytocin and dopamine, which foster feelings of connection, contentment, and well-being. And purposeful action, by aligning behavior with deeply held values, reinforces these positive neural networks, creating a virtuous cycle of positive feedback. This means that what begins as a conscious, effortful trick gradually evolves into an embodied state, a default mode of being. Anya, our illustrative client, initially found herself walking through invisible mud, her every step a struggle against unseen forces of self-doubt and anxiety. Her early attempts at conscious attention might have felt forced, her efforts at cognitive reframing awkward. But with consistent practice, the mud began to dissipate, replaced by solid ground. The space between stimulus and response widened organically. The ability to reframe challenges became second nature. Her capacity for self-compassion deepened, and the burden of past grievances lightened with each act of forgiveness. Gratitude became an inherent lens through which she perceived the world, and her actions began to flow from a place of genuine purpose. This transition from deliberate practice to unconscious competence is a hallmark of true mastery. It is the point where the architect's tools no longer feel like external implements but become an extension of the architect's own hand. The distinction between the trick and the practitioner blurs. We cease to do gratitude. We become grateful. We no longer practice compassion. We embody compassion. This embodiment fundamentally alters our relationship with ourselves and the world, transforming us from passive recipients of circumstance into active co-creators of our reality. One of the most profound benefits of this integrated architecture is the cultivation of an unshakable inner resilience. Life, in its inherent dynamism, will inevitably present challenges, setbacks, and moments of profound difficulty. The always work promise does not imply a cessation of external problems, but rather the development of an internal framework that ensures our capacity to navigate these challenges with grace, wisdom, and an unwavering sense of inner peace. When faced with adversity, the individual who has diligently cultivated these practices possesses an internal fortress, not one of isolation, but of strength and adaptability. Consider a moment of acute stress or disappointment. Without this integrated framework, the mind might immediately plunge into a cascade of negative self-talk, lack of cognitive reframing, react with blame or anger towards others, absence of compassion or forgiveness, or fall into a spiral of despair, overlooking any silver linings, lack of gratitude. However, for the individual whose inner architecture is robust, the response is fundamentally different. Conscious attention allows for the immediate recognition of the rising emotional storm without being swept away by it. Cognitive reframing provides the mental agility to seek alternative perspectives, transforming potential failure into a learning opportunity. Self-compassion acts as a buffer against harsh self-criticism, fostering kindness in moments of vulnerability. The ability to forgive, both oneself and others, prevents resentment from festering and consuming vital energy. Gratitude anchors one in the present moment, reminding us of existing blessings even amidst difficulty. And finally, purposeful action guides us to respond to the challenge in a way that aligns with our deepest values, rather than reacting impulsively or destructively. This synergistic application creates a feedback loop where each practice reinforces the others, strengthening the overall system. A moment of conscious attention can prompt a reframing of a challenging situation, which in turn fosters compassion for oneself and others involved. This compassion might then lead to an act of forgiveness, freeing up emotional energy that can be channeled into gratitude, inspiring purposeful action. The entire process becomes a seamless, intuitive dance, allowing us to not merely survive challenges, but to grow and even thrive because of them. Moreover, the impact of this profound inner transformation extends far beyond the individual. We are, by our very nature, social beings. Our inner state inevitably ripples outwards, influencing our relationships, our communities, and ultimately the collective consciousness. An individual practicing conscious attention becomes a more present and engaged listener. One skilled in cognitive reframing approaches disagreements with a more open and constructive mindset. The cultivation of compassion naturally leads to greater empathy, fostering deeper connections and reducing conflict. Forgiveness dissolves the bitterness that can poison interpersonal dynamics, allowing for healing and reconciliation. Gratitude, when expressed, strengthens bonds and creates a positive atmosphere. And purposeful action, driven by values, inspires others and contributes meaningfully to the common good. Imagine a workplace, a family, or a community where a critical mass of individuals consistently embodies these principles. The atmosphere shifts from one of suspicion, competition, and reactivity to one of understanding, collaboration, and proactive problem-solving. This is not a utopian fantasy, but a demonstrable outcome of personal psychological mastery. When we transform ourselves, we invariably transform our immediate environment. Anya's journey, though deeply personal, began to manifest externally in her interactions. Her newfound clarity and calm allowed her to communicate more effectively, to listen more deeply, and to contribute to her projects with a renewed sense of purpose, subtly influencing those around her. Crucially, this journey of inner architecture is not a destination but an ongoing odyssey. The chastu quote wa the aspect of these tricks lies in their continuous applicability, their capacity for endless refinement and deepening. Just as a physical muscle requires consistent exercise to maintain its strength, so too does the mind benefit from the regular, conscious engagement with these practices. New challenges will arise. New opportunities for growth will present themselves, and our understanding of ourselves and the world will continue to evolve. This is the beauty of neuroplasticity. The brain is always capable of learning, adapting, and growing. Therefore, we are not merely offering a set of solutions to current problems, but a framework for a lifetime of conscious creation and continuous self-mastery. The joy inherent in this process lies not just in the outcomes, but in the very act of engaging with it. The quiet satisfaction of mastering one's attention, the liberating power of reframing a difficult situation, the warmth of genuine compassion, the peace of forgiveness, the abundance discovered through gratitude, and the fulfillment of living a life aligned with purpose. This integrated approach to simple psychological tricks empowers us to move beyond merely coping with life's demands. It enables us to sculpt our inner world with intentionality and artistry, transforming the reactive, often chaotic human experience into a deliberate, meaningful, and deeply fulfilling existence. It is the pathway to not just surviving, but truly flourishing, regardless of external circumstances, creating an enduring sense of inner peace and an unwavering capacity to contribute positively to the world. The architecture is built, the symphony is ready to be played. The ongoing practice is the performance, and the life lived is the masterpiece.